All right, all set. Episode 1 of Before You Build. My name is Austin.
My name's Eddie.
And we run a general contracting company called Mana Construction Company. We created this video series and podcast because we want to get to know our clients better and we want our clients to get to know us better. And so, Eddie, why don't you just tell us a little bit more about your background as a builder?
So I started in construction when I was young. My father actually helped me start working in the field. Started with landscaping, irrigation, and kind of moved on from there. I started building custom homes, started doing some of those different trades like mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. Started learning carpentry, started looking at all different aspects. I enjoyed every part of it. So then started doing commercial. Worked for a GC, building shopping centers to, different concepts, restaurants, fine dining, to office spaces. So I loved every aspect, and here I am today, building medical as well as office buildings as well as restaurants. So it's been a journey, but yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Yeah, so you went from you learned everything from the ground up.
Yep, and hands-on, always implementing myself into every different trade, and learning from experience.
Yeah, when we were testing the mics and the angle, we were talking about how you like to build things and not just oversee a project of a luxury office building or ground up, restaurant or whatever. Like you like to actually get your hands on things and build them. And I think that's why a lot of people respect you in the field, but it's also it brings you actual joy. Like you love it.
Yeah, I do. I really enjoy it. I think I've always had that I've always thought of how things work, how things operate, and I like to get into the weeds. So I definitely like to get my hands dirty, involved. Even from operating pieces of machinery on the site, It's one of those things that I really, it brings me joy. It brings me.
Yeah, I've seen you operate like a forklift before.
Yeah.
And not only do you do it with such ease and expertise, but it's always with a big smile.
It is.
And I've seen you deadlift stand-up freezers. I've seen you, do just about everything that you could imagine, from the smallest to the biggest jobs, which is super fun. That gives me, I know, a lot of trust in you. And I think our relationship started when I was an ops liaison for Panera, and we were starting to build restaurants together. And I always found it very comforting knowing that you have the experience that you have. That I know that I can take you into any room or any situation, and you can be the expert there. Now we obviously have other PMs, and project coordinators and people who work other facets of the building process. But I think you at the helm of the construction expert gives us a lot of strength. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of, it started off with touting your horn a bit.
Yeah.
One of the things that we wanted to specifically focus on, and why we named it Before You Build, was we're thinking from the perspective of our clients, but also as owners ourselves, as people who who own and run a large restaurant portfolio, and then have this general contracting business to build those restaurants, but also to build for other people. And we wanted to begin to talk about what happens before the build that's important to consider, and not just the tactics of it, but the conversations and the ideas that are happening before construction even starts. And so much of these decisions that you make before construction or before you build, in the pre-construction phase, in the development phase, pre-development, whatever you want to call it, they stick with you for a long time. And so obviously on we made the decision to go digital. I've been, on LinkedIn talking a little bit about this, like kind of just giving some general ideas about, about this. But I wanted to hear from your perspective, like when I say, when I started talking about this idea before you build and, going out there and really like soliciting outside work like aggressively,
Yeah.
what were the first like things that were coming to your mind, or what are the things that are coming to your mind when you're thinking about like this is like my perspective on why that's important to
Yeah.
talk about?
What I've learned, with this company is just those pre-construction meetings that I've had that, that involve design, that involve different interactions with operations, different interactions with the design team. They help a couple things, right? Your operator operates differently. As a contractor, you typically don't look at that, right? That's something you don't observe. They deal with operations, you deal with construction. I get the virtue of both worlds, right? Right now, we deal with operations to see how they operate and how I can make this establishment easier for them to operate. There are things that I can do to help assist. For example, there's items, some of the cabinetry, some of the fixtures that go into any location. Hey, we have constant issues with this problem. Okay, what's the constant issue? Water. Water is a big issue, especially in drink areas. They always ruin the cabinetry. They ruin other things. Okay, how can we make that change? Hey, let's incorporate this, a waterproof material, FRP, that we can put inside of the cabinet to help prevent and make that cabinet live longer, right? That's the intent, is to help operations create a more long-term establishment with less maintenance.
And do you think, like, I mean, we've watched this happen, hundreds of times. I would say every build that we do, there are, half a dozen to a dozen changes that we make.
Yes.
For every time that we've done this. Even for our own portfolio, that that are significant to the operations and to the finishes and to the size of the building. Like, unless you're building all the time and you have the feedback from operations and owner to construction like very frequently, like those lines of communications are happening after every single project,
Right.
And before every single project, then like a lot of those like what seems to like us micro decisions, like they make a huge difference. And like I've forgotten the amount of the things that we've changed over the years, to fine tune our process. And it doesn't matter if you're working for like a super sophisticated brand,
Exactly.
or if even you're starting, like you have a couple, shops, like there's always things that are overlooked, and there's always, finishes that are too expensive, or they don't work in the right areas, or, there's ways to move around certain things that, once you build them a couple times, you realize like this isn't probably a good idea. Like we see that, with wallpaper, we see that with the color of tile that we use, for mopping, and we see that in certain areas where you shouldn't use tile, especially if you have bakery racks that are going to be moving through. Like there's thousands of these micro decisions that add up.
Yeah.
And it's extremely helpful, to have a contractor who understands how to make those changes happen on the building side, before you build.
So some of the things I like to do is make suggestions. Hey, let's look at these avenues. These are, I know, obstacles that you run into after operating a certain amount of time in a location. These are some of the problems that come about. Here's how to resolve those. For example, quarry tile. You mentioned tile. So one of the issues is, you got grout joints. You got a lot of them. Grout deteriorates, especially with the chemicals that you utilize, some of those things. So what's the best alternative? There's different options. You can do epoxy flooring in the back, a house that's still health compliant. You can also do a rubberized floor system that, so we tested out these theories and discovered
Yeah.
what the best thing,
So many,
best
so,
solution.
so many.
Yeah,
Really.
yeah.
And like for me, it's funny because from my perspective, like I cut my teeth in operating restaurants. And so I grew up out of like the restaurant, sort of like the operating model, operator model. And like I could tell you like, hey, this doesn't look right, this doesn't feel right. But like I might not know what that practically, like what my options are. And I think of like the the floor that we use in the back of house.
Yes.
Like you have the knowledge and expertise to know like, oh yeah, that's not our only option. Like you can think through like the health codes and the different things that may be important to know, and take that thought that I have and put it into play and even begin to anticipate, for lack of better words, my needs as an operator or as an owner that's trying to build the most efficient and effective space possible. You can start thinking like that and implementing those things yourself.
Exactly. And that's it. That's what I feel is my job.
Right.
To make sure I build something that's going to last, that makes sense, that, is longevity is key.
Right.
And there's so many different options in so many different areas, and it doesn't just apply to a restaurant. It applies to everything. Office spaces, you got chairs that beat up walls. What else can we do? You have all kinds of constant maintenance that you could preventive maintenance, right? To help deter some of those things and, prevent those things from happening. So it applies everywhere.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the unique perspectives that we have as well, is that because we also manage our restaurants after the build, which maybe there's an idea there that we can discuss maybe with Drew called after the build.
Yeah.
But really, we have this sort of full 360 view of like the very origin of a project, and sometimes that's just dirt. To the very end of like a lease that's been around for 25 years. Yeah. And so when you look at that, you start to see the things that are super important. You miss the chair rail by 4 inches, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Like the walls don't look good. There's problems. You put in the wrong color carpet and you clean it 4 or 5 times and it already starts to go.
Yeah.
We've done this before. Like it's very significant whether you choose to open up your kitchen space or close your kitchen space. The floor that you use, the structure that you choose. Do you want to manage your space or a closed one? Like there's just so many thousands of things that I think like I hurt for restaurants, and I know that we build more than restaurants, but like I hurt for those owner operators that come in and they think that the building is not part of the model. Like they think that it's just like it's secondary to what they're doing. And in fact, like especially in a restaurant, like it is very much core and central to what you do.
Yeah.
And so, I just love the idea of being able to come around people, these people who have these dreams to open up these stores and restaurants and retail spaces, and offer something meaningful to the world and be able to come alongside them and help them do that.
Yeah.
Feels like very, very fulfilling. And I know that's your heart too.
It is, and I want to take those ideas from the owner and help them incorporate it. We don't know what kind of situation they're in. We don't know financially how they're doing and how they're going to build this, but here it is. It's like, we can give you options, we can give you thoughts. There's maybe things that you don't think about, as an owner, you don't think about in regards to, let's say you want an open concept, you want an open ceiling, it's like, okay, well, there's things I can look at that I can see where there's going to be additional costs that you may not see.
Yeah, I mean, opening up a ceiling, just that alone, like people don't know like what the cost is to that.
Exactly. And what it entails.
Yeah, and that's I think like where it gets really interesting, right? You're like, man, I have this vision, like I want to see I want to see what's under the ceiling. Like I want it to feel like a warehouse and like give this, and it's like it's really cool looking. We've done that many times. but the cost like associated with these decisions are very rarely, it's not common knowledge.
Right. Right.
And I think that those are, like that's what I love to do with you. Like I like to take you to spaces and be like, what do you think this is going to cost? And a lot of times you'll be like, I don't know, I don't, and I'll be like, is it 60 grand? You're like, no. I'm like, okay, is it 40 grand? You're like, no. Like, okay, so it's 50. Like it's some, and being able to get a sense of, really rapid fire
Right.
costs. I mean, this is true. I can think of 2 clients right now, potential clients for us. One has a napkin drawing of a concept, and like literally drawn on a napkin, so you can imagine what potentially could be missed.
Exactly.
And 2, someone who is being, sort of relocated into a different space because of the center is evolving, and there's all these ideas around what the space should look like, but no real, how could they know? No real sense of cost. And so instead of like blowing up their dreams and being like, you have to gently come alongside them. And that's, to me, that's very, like, I think that's so meaningful and helpful. We've sat with, business owners before who are, very much in the weeds and very, very much in the reactive state. And when these owners are running their businesses with everything that they got, it's hard to slow down and be very thoughtful before you start something as significant as building a new store or a restaurant, and we can help them do that, which is super fun.
Exactly. No, unfortunately, I've seen mishaps that happen in regards to their builds, and it's now you're running 50 feet to go get water because you forgot to implement it in another location. So those can be very painful, as as operators of businesses, every step counts for all your employees. Whoever's there running the location, it makes a difference. So you want to make sure that you do your best to try to capture that and try to assist them in that development process to make sure that they're doing it right and they're helping themselves versus hurting themselves. Right. So, those are the things that I'm always looking for, and I've learned to do that through experience of continuously redesigning these. As you say, they continue to evolve just like anything else. Every concept continues to evolve, and we adapt to it. We figure it out, and we make additional suggestions. Mm-hmm. I like to do debriefs after jobs that we do. So that's one of the things that I love to do with the owner, to kind of go over, hey, what are some of the things you're seeing? Maybe a month, maybe a year after, we can have that discussion and kind of see, hey, where do you see some flaws? Where do you see some, and kind of get ready for the next build. It's like, really, it's working with them to try to perfect what they're designing and what their dream is, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's so, there's so many people that come alongside you in your journey as like as an owner operator. And I hate to, I don't know how it's the right way to say it, but like one of the most important, for sure, in a place where brick and mortar are part of your business plan is your general contractor. Mm-hmm. And it is very, like I've said this before, but like it's very easy to hand a general contractor, it feels very easy to hand a general contractor a set of plans and say like, build it. It's entirely different thing when the general contractor is partnering with you to create your dream. And I think that's where it becomes, like that's a very significant difference when you're inviting a general contractor in very early on to help you shape what eventually will be, what's providing for you and your family. And, again, sometimes, when we're working with major, bigger brands, maybe a construction manager may not feel the same type of way that an owner does towards these decisions, but they do still have skin in the game, right? They have a reputation. They are building their career. They're wanting to advance, in in their development. And even with those types, of roles, it's important that you're partnering with someone who can help you develop and help you see maybe what you're not seeing, or give you a sense of, like, from our perspective, like, hey, like, these are the things that are changing, what we're hearing in terms of, like, rising costs, or the challenges for contractors, or these are the things that we've seen in other brands. Like, there's a lot of benefits even for a construction manager who's representing a bigger brand, and might be removed from maybe direct, like, conversations with the owner, but they're still very much, we can represent them very well if we take interest into what they're responsible for and who they report back to, which is something that I find to be, really rewarding when it works out well, when we can, have someone like a construction manager show very well for the company that they're working for, which obviously leads to more business for us, but then also, like, hopefully more opportunity for them, which to me makes the work meaningful.
Yeah, agreed. And, dealing with different construction managers and different, concepts, a lot of them like to throw out what they call VE, value engineering. We all want to keep the cost down, and we all want to save the company money, but we don't want to hurt the company, right? What I can save right now, they'll end up spending that plus more in the long run. So I look at VE solutions. Yes, I do incorporate some of those, and I do give options in regards to those, but I still look at making sure that those VE solutions don't hurt them in the future. That's the intent, right? And
Yeah, we should do a whole discussion
on just
VE,
that.
because I think one of the things that, like, we see a lot of is, or we make a decision as an owner a lot of the times for our restaurants, is, like, it isn't the cheapest. It's rarely the cheapest option that's the best choice. Like we make decisions, and I did a post about this when we first started on LinkedIn about how we put 9 sets of plans back into the city during COVID, because we had a change in our operating model, and it was significant enough to have to go back for permits and everything. Like, we had to go through the whole city process again, and that's a very costly. You're rewriting plans, you're paying for an architect, you're paying for, I don't know if we had consultants involved.
Yeah, and delays.
Yeah, delays. I mean, obviously. So, I do think that there's a moment where we should go into that. But to your point, like, it's just not as straightforward as it appears, and you need a partner to help you with that. So I think in terms of episode 1, we really just wanted to dip our toes in the water and begin to just talk very openly about this idea of before you build, which is this, like, okay, how do we take an ownership mindset to being a general contractor, right? And not just an ownership mindset in the sense of, like, we are running and we're responsible for managing construction, but also, like, how do we, be the best version of ourselves for our clients? And I do believe it's this idea of, this before you build mindset. And so I hope, we can flesh that out more in detail, but, I think that there's a lot of rabbit holes we could go on. So thanks, Eddie.
Thanks for having.
Yeah, having you. We're right next door.
Yeah.
Sick.